Everybody, welcome to our Bar and Restaurant Owners Roundtable. I'm Julie Forsyth with the Quad Cities Chamber, Senior Vice President for Business and Economic Growth. The Quad Cities Chamber strives to be your one-stop business resource to assist during this coronavirus pandemic, connecting you to reliable and accurate information as we're doing today right now. There's always a lot of new information to process and respond to during these changing and uncertain times, and the Chamber is here for you, definitely advocating for your business at the state and federal levels and providing resources to help you protect the health of your workforce and operations. We are committed to bringing you the latest information as quickly as possible. Our meeting will be recorded this morning and available later today on the Chamber's website. I would like to introduce our panel and our facilitator this morning. Joining us, we have Tom Trone, Chapter Chair for SCORE, Stacy Kluesner, Vice President for the Iowa Restaurant Association, Tim Baldwin, owner of Front Street Brewery and Front Street Pub and Eatery, Mike Osborne, owner of Miss Mamie's, as well as Mo Brady's and the Half Nelson, and Dan Bush, owner of Armored Gardens and co-owner of Devon's Complaint Department and Analog. Tom, our facilitator, he's a certified mentor with SCORE and a University of Iowa Venture School faculty member. He also is a co-founder of Riverbend Angels, retired deer, and has started many businesses in the past. He has extensive experience in many industry sectors, including food service. And he and his wife, Sue, actually, who is also a SCORE mentor, have owned and operated several restaurants. So at this point, I would love to turn it over to Tom, Stacy, Tim, Mike, and Dan. Good morning.
Thank you, Julie. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. Again, my name is Tom Trone, and just a few words about SCORE. SCORE is a resource partner of the Small Business Administration. We're also a resource partner with the Quad Cities Chamber in the region that we serve. SCORE Quad Cities serves 15 counties in Illinois and Iowa. And we work very closely together to support common goals of building out the entrepreneurial ecosystem and supporting economic development in our region. SCORE has 10,000 mentors that work across the country in 1,500 different communities to help entrepreneurs at all stages. And we, in this last 8 months, SCORE has been involved with all types of resource partners in helping businesses of all sizes navigate through the challenges of the pandemic. And the food and beverage industry has been hit particularly hard, as we all know, if you watch the news, if you just look at your own personal behavior of how it's changed what you do and where you go. And we all know that we have changed how we visit and consume foods and beverages eaten out of the home. So today's focus is on where we are in that journey of navigating the pandemic challenges. This is the fourth in a series of roundtables that we've done, including 3 of the same owner-operators from the Quad Cities that we've had from the beginning. So Mike, Dan, and Tim, and we have been talking about their businesses, the conditions that they're in, and what they are doing or planning to do or have done to cope. So they're with us again today. Importantly, we have a guest today. Stacy Kluesner is with us from the Iowa Restaurant Association. She's the vice president. As you heard in my past, I've owned and operated food and beverage operations. And the National Restaurant Association, the state associations, and local restaurant associations have been critical to me in helping to manage successful operations. And the associations today are particularly relevant, particularly important in helping food and beverage operators navigate through these challenges. So Stacy, if you could, you've got a prepared slide deck here. Talk a bit about your perspective as the VP of Iowa Restaurant Association of what we have learned since the pandemic has started in March, what the current state of the industry is, as well as how you and other associations like you support operators going forward. Stacy?
Great. Thanks, Tom and Julie and everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning. As I mentioned, I'm Stacy Kluesner. I'm with the Iowa Restaurant Association. Here we are, just a quick overview of who we are. We're a member-based nonprofit trade association. We protect, promote, educate, and advocate for Iowa's hospitality industry. We represent legislative interests both in Iowa and in Washington, D.C. We're a state affiliate of the National Association. I think a lot of times people think they're the parent company and we're the franchisee, but we're actually our own independent entity and belong to a consortium of state associations where then we are in a dual membership agreement with the National Association. Currently, we have I just checked last evening, we've got nearly 600 members in the state of Iowa. Prior to March 17th at 10 a.m., there were more than 6,000 license holders. There were about 6,300 license holders in the state of Iowa. What that number is currently, we don't know because it's a moving target. I know that I've heard several closures this week just in the Des Moines area as well as in outlying areas. And so I know that that number is a continually moving target. And we hope that it doesn't continue to drop, but currently it's an unknown. What does the restaurant industry look like? This is when I define restaurant industry, and we do as the association. This is just a quick overview. So when we're speaking, we kind of have an idea of what that is. It's full service restaurants, it's quick service, it's country clubs, it's golf courses, it's gas stations and convenience stores, it's cafeterias, buffets, food trucks, things like that. And so that is the definition of the restaurant industry in Iowa. Prior to March 17th, in 1955, 25% of the dollar was spent in the restaurant industry. Prior to March 17th, it was 51% of the food dollar. And that was part of where we saw when the beginning of the pandemic, there was such a disruption in the supply chain. When restaurants were closed and people were shopping in grocery stores and trying to get everything they could to cook at home, that really demonstrated what percentage the industry has of the American, and in particular, the Iowa food dollar. I think that's something that folks in government circles who made the decisions for shutdowns and things like that didn't fully realize how the food dollar was distributed throughout the industry. Here we were, again, it's important to know where we were prior to March 17th. The national industry, we were in 2019 had in excess of $863 billion in annual sales, more than 1 million locations across the country. In the Iowa restaurant industry, we had more than $4.4 billion in sales, more than 6,200 locations, as I just said, more than 155,000 employees. And the biggest concern in our industry prior to the shutdown and prior to the pandemic was, can I find enough employees to staff my restaurant? There just simply weren't enough. Certainly the concerns that we all have now are far more different than what they were then, but that was our biggest concern heading into the pandemic. Things changed abruptly, as I mentioned, 10 a.m., March 17th. On March 28, 2020, this is a national statistic, that Dine In sales dropped 85% on March 28th compared to that day in March 28th of 2019. So there was a pretty abrupt disruption in the industry. As you all know, the shutdowns were devastating, bottom line for our operators, and they continue to be today, as does the moving target for where the industry might land. September is the most recent month of statistics that are currently available. Right now, restaurant operators report same-store sales versus same month in the previous year. For September of same-store sales were 32% of 2019. Lower same-store sales, obviously, the opposite of that, are 60% for 2020. And these, I think, will drop significantly when we see October numbers because of the new instituted shutdowns and on-premise dining suspension, as well as looking at the change in hours. I think that these will be significantly less. So here, restaurant owners' outlook for same sales. For October, the anticipation was that they would be 32% of before, and 45% would be lower. That certainly was an outlook. It'll be interesting to see where we land, and fully anticipate that those numbers will drop as we head into the winter months. The economic outlook for 6 months is that there'll be better conditions in 6 months. October anticipates that there will be better conditions. We certainly hope there will be, because then we'll be through winter. And perhaps, you know, as we all hold on tight and pray for the vaccine to take effect, and that each month we learn more about COVID, that it allows us to make better and more informed decisions for operations and business. So 2020 has been a year of change. This kind of just shows where we are nationally for a percentage of total sales by service. So in March of 2020, in excess of 80% of all restaurant sales were dine-in. Delivery was less than 10%. Still remains less than 10%, but takeout is the most noted. In March of 2020, it was less than 20%. Look to where we went to in April and in May, takeout. We're dropping again with takeout. We've increased with on-premise dining for September, but again, that's going to drop. My fear is that takeout doesn't increase. You know, we talk about COVID fatigue and why we've seen an increase in numbers in the virus. I think we also have seen a little fatigue with takeout in talking with members across the state of Iowa. Everybody was really gung-ho. People were so excited at the beginning. Support local business, support your restaurants. They're dying. You know, you've got to get out there. They don't have people in their places. They can't make it. And that message is still beyond true. But I think that publicly, we've quit talking about that a little bit. Everybody's tired of talking about the troubles that we're all struggling with. And so I challenge you in your circles to talk about that, to support your local restaurants. You certainly can go grocery shopping, but it is 100% safe to do takeout. And as far as dine-in, we can talk about that here a little bit more in some of the statistics. It's safe to go and eat in a bar and restaurant as well. The modeling and the statistics that have been out there, they're unfounded for the spread in bars and restaurants. They're a little unfounded. And so I think if you take the precautions and follow some of the things that are laid forth, it's totally safe. So support your local restaurants. National survey of operators. How confident are you that your business would survive another 4 to 6 week indoor shutdown? 43% are not at all confident. 28 are fairly, and 23 are very confident. My guess is those 23%, they have really been able to either pivot their model to a takeout and delivery mode, or they had it prior to the pandemic. I think folks who that's not been what they do, or they might be located in a business district that depends on their customer base for the businesses and the industry around them, those folks are the people who are not confident at all. All right, what are we looking at here currently for restaurant operators and how they're surviving? Only 25, barely 26% are generating enough revenue to break even. Why is this? They believe that, you know, the government imposed restrictions have contributed to that. What are they worried about here? The staffing of their restaurant. What are the other things they're worried about? Health and sanitation, keeping up with rent payments, food and labor costs, consumer reluctance. That's a big one. It says 4.9%, but I really think that people worry about that significantly more. And then employee retention. Those are the things that are top of mind for operators currently. And as I mentioned, prior to the pandemic, it was having enough employees. You can see how we flipped significantly. As you know, in Iowa, we once again are facing changes in the industry. I briefly go over what the latest proclamation changes are. Many of you, my fellow panelists, you're fully aware of what the proclamation is, but I want to share that because I think oftentimes the public grabs onto pieces of it and they don't always understand what the implications are for owners and operators. The mandates that were issued on Monday evening, those impact hospitality, but not just us. They're in a lot of other industries, as you mentioned, Tom, as we see the pandemic numbers increase and cases increase, which by the way, though, I saw in Iowa, we've seen a little drop. I know that it might seem insignificant, but I think going from 4,000 plus positives a day to 3,000, that shows we're moving in the right direction. And as we all know, viruses are cyclical like that. And so we hope that all of our mitigation standards continue to drop those number of cases so it allows people to dine on premise and enjoy the hospitality industry. Governor Reynolds has said that she avoid high-risk activities. But as you notice in here, social distancing and mask recommendations, which we'll talk a little bit about, but indoor entertainment, but she does not talk about indoor dining, although that's one of the things that's been limited by the time frame. She doesn't call it out specifically. And for that, we're grateful. We're incredibly grateful for that because it is safe to dine in a restaurant and to be in a bar and participate safely in those things. All businesses or other employers with in-person operations still take reasonable precautions. I think that's so important, that the message that has been missed in terms of hospitality all along are the safety and sanitation precautions that we've had in place long before the pandemic. This isn't something that's new to us. We have always washed our hands frequently. We have always practiced safe sanitation. And I think those messages, not everybody always assumed that, but in the state of Iowa, everybody's required to have at least one food safety protection manager per license. Many have one per shift. And that shows the pride that the industry takes in the safety of their customers, because frankly, if people aren't healthy and we're not doing what we're supposed to, folks aren't going to come back. All right, I'm not sure why I'm not. There we go. But masks. And so now, although there's no mask mandate, it is required that all front of house and back of house employees have a mask on while they're working, as well as customers. When they enter a bar or restaurant, they must have a mask on. They don't have to, I think this was really important. Yesterday, we had some clarification on a call with Department of Inspections and Appeals and the Iowa Alcoholic Beverages Division, but somebody had asked the question is, do people have to wear a mask at the table and take it down for each bite, put it back up, down at each bite? And they said, no, that's simply not necessary. You've chosen to dine with the people you're dining with at your table. As long as there's food and drink in front of you, you're fine. You don't have to pull the mask up and down. Certainly you can, but that piece is not required. Indoor gatherings of 15 people, of more than 15 people are prohibited. What this means is that it impacted weddings, event venues, and things like that. You can't have more than 8 people at a table who are non-familiar at a restaurant. But that doesn't mean that you as a restaurant operator can't have a full restaurant full of 8-person tables as long as you are social distancing, that all of those are 6 feet apart. Outdoors, 30 or less. And again, still encouraging masking. Restaurants and bars, our hours are limited, unfortunately, to 10 p.m. We did get clarification on that yesterday, and that's a hard close. And so it's kind of like the 2 a.m. bar time. Everybody has to be out of the building. Of course, operators can continue to clean and do those things. We can do takeout for that time. And so folks, please do continue to order to go from your local restaurants. You can get cocktails to go as well during that time. Masks are required while not seated. We talked about that, and social distancing continues just to keep folks safe. As far as casinos and gaming, they must encourage social distancing with 6 feet apart as well. They shall comply with all of the requirements of bars and restaurants in the proclamation for any food and beverage service, which means they too have to quit serving at 10 p.m. Bowling, pool halls, bingo, things like that. Again, also have to close at 10, but people can go ahead and bowl. You just have to keep your groups small. Please go ahead, go do that with your family. Everybody wants to get out over the holidays a little bit, and you can do that by staying socially distanced, because those places aren't going to put you in lanes right next to one another. Go do something, patronize local establishments. Again, just more than a 15, you have to wear social distancing, and their theaters and performance venues. Somebody talked about this yesterday. Can we have live music? Yes, you can. Depending upon where folks are in terms of to the audience, those performers may or may not need to wear masks. It was kind of an it depends type of situation. But everybody does need to close at 6 p.m. I'm sorry, 10 p.m. Karaoke can happen, but as a karaoke, a person who's singing, you must wear a mask. I've got a son in show choir. They've got these pretty little cool singers masks. They extend from their face and they're still able to sing. So, you know, maybe some folks who really enjoy that should take a look at some of those things or those little there so they can still enjoy themselves. What this means for Iowa, winter's coming. And truly, we just don't know what that means. I have seen from over in your area, I saw a picture, I should have showed the photo, of Mississippi River Distillery had some of those outdoor little, for kind of a little yurt type thing where they could dine outdoors. I know that many chambers across the state have given patio heaters out there. Folks are saying, bring your own blanket. I'm actually talking with somebody this next week who sells panels to enclose a place where you can do heating. I think that there's a lot of options, but I also know that operators are short on cash and they're not sure. Do they fully winterize now to do outdoor dining? Do they do indoor dining? We just don't know. And unfortunately, it's a moving target because we don't know what's coming at us in terms of the governor's office. Now, what our role is as the association is we talk with them regularly. We do help to tell the story of the industry. And what are the statistics? What are the stories? And so with all the shutdowns, what does that mean in terms of relief for our members? How can we provide some financial stability for folks? Federally, we're advocating there as well as state-wise. Short-term cash infusions of grants. Nobody needs another loan. And that's currently where we are today. I'm happy to answer questions, move on to the panel, whatever works best.
Yeah, let's hold the questions till later. Thank you for your insights and
you bet.
And your important role. Thank you for everything that you and your association does. With that segue, let's move into our panel discussion. Mike Osborne, I'm going to start with you. Mike and I met in a SCORE mentor-client relationship 3 years ago and have gotten to be friends. Mike, let's talk about what pivots and lessons that you've learned since we last met in this roundtable in September. You've been quite active.
The recent shutdown of Dine In Illinois was a real kind of a gut punch. We had just finished a renovation, interior renovation, and we were seeing an increase in volume. Dine In volume was very encouraging. I think just prior to the shutdown, we had the best week since the COVID had started, and then the shutdown happened. And we decided at that point that we had a tent up during our renovation because our seating was actually cut down to about 25%. So we put the tent back up. We put a heater in the tent. We started delivery. We felt that we had to get food in people's homes or in their cars. And the tent was, on nicer days, was a great option. We've had some decent weather. Yesterday was a decent day. So we had probably all day 50 patrons in the tent between lunch and dinner. The tent is expensive. I'm not sure how much longer we're going to do the tent. But we are starting a drive-through. We have a layout of our building enables us to do kind of a drive-through where we can use our handheld toast terminals, take people's orders, have them pull around to another door, and we're calling it Miss Mamie's Express or Mamie's Express. Very limited menu, sandwiches, things like that, and we'll probably take a cue from the fast food, and during peak times we'll probably have some items pre-prepared, and then just reheat them in a conveyor oven situation. We've enlisted the servers to be delivery drivers. Those are some of the things that we've done in our Iowa restaurants where we're not affected. We can still have dine in. We started a recent promotion, date night at home, kind of a bundled appetizer, entree, dessert with a gift of either like I think we're giving away a CD or a LP record album or something like that, where people can just spend a little time together at home. So those are some of the things that we've done, and some have been successful.
Yeah,
been successful. Some haven't, but we'll keep trying, keep plugging away.
We'll come back in story here in a few minutes. Dan, you've been quite active as well this fall. What have you learned and what have you done differently? Come off mute. Dan, come off mute.
Everyone hear me?
Yep.
No, I mean, I think up good. Yeah, I mean, up until about a week ago, our fall sales were great. We were plugging along. I think the future looks bright. Hang on. The future looks bright with the vaccine. I think by next summer, I think we'll start seeing a return to normalcy. I think our local situation right now, though, is very, very dire. The hospitals are at their brink, and I disagree that it is totally safe to eat in a bar or restaurant. Georgia Tech has a risk assessment model for events by county. And if there's a gathering of 50 people in Scott County right now, there's a 98% chance that COVID is present. Anywhere where there's a group of people unmasked, in any scenario, there is risk. And I think we all need to take that very seriously. And so from our perspective, we're trying to figure out where we go from here if the governor doesn't shut us down, if we voluntarily shut down for a few weeks or a month or two. Because in our perspective, it may not be responsible to be open with the number of cases in our county right now.
Yeah, Dan just talked about a harsh reality. He and I've talked outside of this roundtable, and when we talked in September, there was some optimism and hope that we could push COVID back, and that we as individual citizens would take this seriously and do our part to do that. The fact is that hasn't happened. Regardless of whatever regulation, rules, mandates come from government, it's still up to us to actually implement and follow them. We haven't done that. So we are here and now, and the situation is what it is. And Dan, I'm going to come back to you a little bit later and just talk about some tough decisions that are ahead here as we go into December, January, February. Tim, you're a leader
Yes,
in this local industry. You've been busy as well. What have you learned and what pivots have you done this fall?
Well, obviously we're experiencing a lot of challenges. I think we've pivoted so much we're just spinning in circles right now. Things feel different now. They feel dramatically different than they did when we started this in March. In March and moving into the what we thought was the peak of COVID, people were more optimistic. I think we were coming out of winter. People were wanting to get outside. There was all sorts of reasons why people were continuing to dine in, and they were optimistic about carry out, or I should say enthusiastic about carry out and so forth. Stacy's chart, I think is spot on. I'd love to see what those numbers look like for October and moving into November. But I can tell you from our perspective, we're really starting to feel the pain now. Fewer and fewer people are walking through the doors on a daily basis. Carry out has slowed to a trickle, as well as deliveries. I think there is fatigue on the part of our consumers, financially. Just everything that's been happening over the last, the summer and the last few months, I think is starting to take its toll on everyone. And I think we better be bracing ourselves for some harsh realities this winter. I'm not sure I'm to the point where Dan is yet, but I can tell you that if we continue to burn the kind of money we're burning right now to keep the doors open, we're going to have to take a serious look at just hitting the pause button. If not out of COVID responsibility, then certainly out of fiscal responsibility. The beer business has been good, and when I say that, I mean our distribution business. We still move a lot of product. People continue to consume more alcohol. We know that's one of the nasty side effects of being in lockdown. And as much as I hate to say it, it's been good for our beer business, but who knows what that means to people's psyche. So that has been helping us keep our heads above water, but it just seems silly to me to be making money on one side of the business just to be shoveling it out the door in the other side of the business. So it's something we're taking a hard look at right now, and I'm not sure what the answer is yet.
Thank you, Tim. On a positive note, I see you're going to introduce a new beer flavor. What is that?
We rolled it out last holiday season, our Snickerdoodle cream ale. Had some great reviews last year, but we made some tweaks, and it is going to be a fantastic product. And honestly, we're, just like at the beginning of COVID, where we were selling growlers of beer by the pallet load, I suspect we may be seeing something similar for the fall and winter season here as people continue to look for a way to comfort themselves in the safety of their own homes.
That sounds like a day road trip for me to come over and grab some of that, Tim.
You should. Actually, you should head to Armored Gardens, because he's filling rubber pants and pickup trucks and whatever vessel you can bring in there to get rid of his beer.
All right.
What was it for a pickup truck full of beer was $200?
Yeah.
Just get rid of the beer, man. Like, just, we all need it.
So the last 10 minutes has been a bit of a harsh reality, but it is what it is. You are three of hundreds of local food and beverage operators, and you are connected to the industry. What are you hearing and feeling from your peers when you're out and about the condition of the industry, the markets, and their businesses in our area? What are you hearing from others?
Well, I ask when I see others, and I try to dine out occasionally at some of my peers' restaurants and locations. And I think we all do this. We all lie to each other. We all tell each other hey, it's not bad. It's going pretty good. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, I know that can't be entirely true, because we see it with our own eyes. So I think people are doing everything they can to be optimistic. And I just wonder what the harsh truth is behind the scenes.
Yeah,
Tim, I think it's that way.
Naturally optimistic. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's that way statewide. I do think it's that way statewide. As we talk to people from Sioux City to Council Bluffs to Iowa City to Cedar Falls, it depends on the concept in some of those communities. But people are saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe we have restrictions because the traffic has dropped so significantly. I'm not sure that was necessary because people aren't coming out anyway. And I don't know if you guys are all feeling that the restrictions, people just in general, they speak to us in terms of restrictions and in terms of how that looks for their customer volume. And that people have said they're just not sure because people truly are not coming out.
Yeah, we saw the decline in traffic long before the restrictions came into play. Mm-hmm. So you're right.
One of the things I've noticed in my own personal life is when we talked in September, we we all knew of somebody or heard about or saw in the media cases, and we heard stories about people. But in my own personal case, COVID and COVID deaths are inside of my personal family and friend circle. That makes it very real. So regardless of what you might see and hear on media or from government officials, when it's that close to you, it does change your perspective and behavior pretty quickly. Mike or Dan, what are you hearing when you're talking to your peers?
Go ahead, Mike.
I think I hear various things, but desperation. I mean, in Illinois and in the Illinois Quad Cities, we saw in Moline people who violated the rule of shutting down the governor's mandate. I think probably 10% of the restaurants and all of the comments from them were all, hey, we have to do this. We have to do this to survive. This is the only way we're going to make it. And so they just literally thumbed their nose at and I could empathize with them. I chose to close and honor the governor's mandates, but I could certainly see where they were coming from. So I think that is really a sign of how desperate it is. So.
Dan?
I mean, from the people I've been talking to, the only one, I mean, no one's killing it. I'd say the one exception is someone I talked to who has a franchise, like a corporate franchise with a drive-through, who says the drive-through is just completely insane. But I think kind of the more full service you go, the harder it's been from the people that I've talked to. I think people are just less likely to actually go sit down in a restaurant for a long period of time and get waited on. I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from. I think that's also because people who typically go to those restaurants skew older, and they have every right to be fearful. You know, as far as the recent restrictions go, I think it's basically putting a Band-Aid on a leaky dam. I think the situation is a situation where a lockdown is what's necessary in order to get the numbers down so that people actually feel comfortable to come out again. What we're seeing is people bleeding out slowly, and it's painful to watch. And I think with a lockdown, what we did similarly, but even harder for the state of Iowa, for 6 to 8 weeks, I think that once we get out of it, people are going to A, want to come out, and B, the numbers are going to make them feel comfortable enough to come out. But we're just not there right now. So the immediate future is not looking very bright.
So as kind of a down note, Dan, but you and I have talked about a difficult decision. Should you stay open or should you close in the period ahead? And Tim, you also participated in that conversation. So Dan, what are the pros and cons from your perspective of open or close? And then Tim.
I think the pro is helping to lessen, helping to flatten the curve. I think that's important, helping to keep my staff safe. The con is that, and the reason that we haven't done it is because we don't know if or when the governor is going to shut us down. And if the answer is no, the situation is just going to escalate. So if we shut down for 2 weeks, it could be worse in 2 weeks. We wouldn't be able to reopen. And we don't know what our burn rate is on that. How long are we able to float everybody? And we basically figured out for what we have, we could do payroll for 2 weeks, where we don't have anything coming in and we have enough in our coffers to keep us going. But we can't voluntarily shut down for, a month or 2 months at 2 months at a time and still be able to support everybody. So our employees are in a position where they want to work because they need the paycheck. And it's kind of a sad situation where they know the risk and they don't want to take on the risk, but they also don't want to lose their apartment. And so it's a Sophie's choice. There really is no winning.
Tim?
Yeah, I don't disagree with Dan's perspective, but I think the other thing that makes this go around a little different is we don't have any support from the federal government or the state in terms of the PPP loans that we had at the beginning, the SBA EIDL loans, which anybody that's taken advantage of those has probably exhausted those funds by now. We certainly have. And it's not like you can go back to the well. It's done. PPP loans are on the table. The unemployment and the extra $600 a week that some of our employees were able to take advantage of early on is gone. So we're kind of out here on our own. And like Dan said, it's there's only so much money, and we're doing everything we can to keep the doors open and keep our people employed. And again, like I said, things feel different this time. People are more scared, or they're taking it more seriously. I don't know which. We have some employees that have finally gotten to the point where they've just had to throw the towel in and stay home because they're not comfortable being in an environment where they've got a group of people at a table that aren't wearing their masks while they're eating or drinking, and they're very concerned about contracting COVID. Since this latest mandate went into place with the mask wearing through the door in the facility and when you're not seated, we took a couple days before hanging the signs just for a little experiment. And I sat at a booth yesterday for 2 hours and watched customers come through the door. And I had said to my staff and my partners that, I think people are responsible and they're all going to walk through the door with masks. So do we really need to put the signs up? And I couldn't be more wrong. Not a single person came through our doors yesterday wearing a mask, at least during that 2 hours that I was there. So of course the signs promptly went up last night. But there's still a whole lot of people. And I have to admit, I am one of those. And maybe I'm stupid, but and knock on wood here. Thank God my desk is wood. I haven't contracted this virus. I haven't done a lot to go out of my way. If I respect people's decisions to mask up, I respect someone's request to make me mask when I walk into their facility if I want to do business there. But generally, I don't wear a mask, and I haven't contracted COVID, or maybe I haven't. It hasn't affected me. I don't know. And there are a lot of my customers that walk through the door that feel the same way. And what I was trying to do is let people be responsible without pissing them off by telling them they have to put a mask on if they don't want to. But the fact of the matter is they're not going to do it. So we have to. And, that's what the governor says. That's the mandate is. And I think it's the responsible thing to do.
Very good. So we've just talked about reality, and it's harsh. Mike, you inspire me with your optimism and your hope, and you have invested a tremendous amount of your money in the future. So let's tap into our optimism and hope for a better future. What do you see in a post-COVID world? You're obviously thinking ahead. You're thinking positively.
Well,
you're putting your dollars in the future. Talk a little bit about life after this.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of when we can see this in the rear view mirror. People say the second quarter, third quarter. I think we'll experience something akin to the roaring 20s. I think there's going to be a lot of pent up demand. That's what I'm hoping for. I mean, if the vaccine is distributed to the healthcare workers and to the at-risk population, which frees up hospital beds and so forth, if that can be controlled, I think that people will start to feel a little safer. The less vulnerable population, as to when that will happen, I don't know, but I guess I think about burn rate, and I think about all the things that we just spoke of, but I choose to just continue to fight. And I mean, I've laid off 8 or 10 people in the last week. So, I mean, we're definitely struggling, but I'm just taking the attitude that I'm going to continue to fight and get food in people's homes any way that I can. So.
Thank you, Mike. We have a few minutes for questions. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to come off mute and ask, please. Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
No,
Dan,
I think that Mike's right. I think there is going to be a giant rubber band effect if we're able to make it through to the spring. For everyone, the snapback of people once they feel safe to go out. I mean, every concert the tickets are going to be 50% higher, and they're going to sell out. Sporting events are going to go nuts. Live events, festivals. There is going to be an explosion. For every action, there's an equal, counter reaction. So I think Mike's right. I think the future is bright. It's hard to see when you're in the weeds. Yeah, and I think people are really going to respond with their dollar come next summer.
No doubt.
Very good. Any questions from the audience? If you come off mute, we have a few minutes for questions.
I've got one. I'm the owner of Grumpy's Village Saloon in the village of East Davenport. And like Dan and Tim, it's like, you can't lose, we're losing money every day. So we're just in that position where do we just close the doors? Which is really hard because it's just hard. The bartenders want to keep working. I'm not a food industry. It's just simply a bar. So that's the only revenue that we have. My question is there any help maybe to Stacy that you see down the pipeline to help these small businesses if we have to close the doors, how do we even reopen them?
We continually ask about that. And I want you to know that we've been in talks with economic development in the governor's office since the proclamation on Monday for some grants through the state for the coronavirus funds that have been sent down through the federal government to distribute those folks to people like you who are, all of you who are just truly struggling and looking at how that is. And then we're also looking at what we can do legislatively when the session comes in January. What can we do for folks to ease some of the payments that might be coming due, whether that be sales tax credits, liquor licenses, and things like that? What can we do? And none of those, I know, fix the deep hole in your bank account. I know they don't. I know there's no way they can take away all that you've had or certainly replace every dime that's been lost. But we are looking at where we can find pockets of money along the way to get back to you. We're hopeful that the federal folks are going to get their poop in a group and start working together and make something happen. Unfortunately, I think we are, the word that we get from DC is they're continually the conversations. I think the unfortunate thing is that people are fighting and they're not at all looking out for the folks who elected them, regardless of their party, that they're so caught up in their own celebrity that they're a little bit losing sight of how to make things happen for people who don't have that continuous paycheck. And personally, I find that incredibly frustrating and sad because, but I do know that then when we talk with our Iowa representatives, regardless of party, whether it's Joni, whether it's Cindy, you name it, those two folks, as well as all of them, have had conversations with the associations, with our members, and they want to hear the stories, they hear them, and they're taking them back. And I think it's just on the greater level that they have to kind of get out of their own space and get to where they are. I believe we'll see some kind of relief and some kind of package. What that looks like, I don't know. And hopefully there'll be something before the end of the year.
Thank you, Stacy. Any other questions from the audience? Okay.
Am I unmuted? I'm sorry. This is Letitia.
No.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, hi guys.
Hey.
So yeah, we're all fishermen in the restaurant business, right? Tim said it right. We don't tell the truth all the time to one another, but we're clearly all in pain in different levels. I was wondering because we're a small restaurant, right, and a small family, and if I am affected, that completely means that my restaurant has to close for 14 days. And that's, and many of us are working in our restaurants right now. We could have a slew of employees before, but we're actively working in our restaurants. And so I was thinking I know it's so hard to say it, but if there could be some agreement that at a period we would all say, we're closing if we could sustain 2 weeks, or even if we say, we're going to close during the week and the restaurants will be open on the weekend or something, so that we can, as a group, collectively agree, we're going to be proactive instead of reactive to whatever the governor has to say. If we can just somehow come up with something that works for us and our community, because this is our community, these are our businesses, and if we all agree, then nobody's looking at somebody else like, well, you're making it because I'm not open, and so I need to be open. You know what I mean? We're not trying to but we're just collectively saying this, we're being proactive. Like I said, the two options would be, maybe we decide we're going to all close during the week and only be open for the weekend just for 2 weeks. I don't even know if that's sustainable, guys. I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying if there's some way, along with Dan's point, if we can be proactive and make some choices, because I would rather be proactive than the governor come back and say, you guys have to close this thing down for 6 months or 6 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, and then there's nothing. That's all. That's my question.
Thank you for that comment. That is a great aspiration, a great idea. Just a final comment from each of our panelists. Dan, starting with you, a final comment or tip to the audience?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Dan, go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, I just really want to, I think the biggest problem in Iowa right now is the cultural denial of what's going on. People come from other areas and visit Iowa and say, you guys really aren't acting any different than you were pre-COVID, as Tim said, with people walking into a restaurant without masks on and things like that. And I think we need just to push for a cultural change and get people to really adopt masks as a part of life right now, and adopt social distancing and just acting with caution. Like they are in larger cities. And, you look at states like Vermont has done an incredible job at keeping their numbers down. And I think it's just, it's a cultural difference. And I think Iowa's behind the curve on that. So my hope is that we start to wake up and realize that we're just making it harder on ourselves.
Tim, final comment from you.
Yeah, I don't, I'm a bit of a little Debbie Downer on the earlier conversation, but just to pile on what Dan and Mike both said, certainly a lot of optimism after we get over this hump. Going back to the spring of this year is the same idea. I mean, even in the midst of the onslaught of COVID, everybody was still screaming and clamoring and wanting to be outside and wanting to dine out and wanting to be around their friends. My wife, I was on a call earlier this morning with the DDP board and learned in advance of my wife learning that the turkey trot had been canceled and is now a virtual event. And she just last night told me how excited she was about running the turkey trot this year, because it's at least something she could do around other people and outside. And she was very disappointed this morning. But lots of optimism. If you were in our office, listening to our internal conversations, you would hear and feel the optimism. I've been working with graphic designers and others on our beer side about some rebranding and new branding. And, there's a lot of excitement. We certainly are preparing ourselves for, like Dan said, this rubber band or rebound that I think it's going to be beyond an equal and opposite reaction. It's going to be an explosion because this pent up demand, people are screaming to get back to real life. And I think it's going to be over exaggerated when the floodgates finally open. So we just need to be able to hold on until we get there, and whatever that takes. If you've got to close down and hunker down to get through this, or if you can figure out how to pivot like Mike has, switch to carry out, minimize your staff, whatever you've got to do to get over the hump, so that when we get there, we're all, we may have emptier pockets, but when we get there, we're ready for the reward that surely will exist on the other side.
Thank you, Tim. Mike, final comment.
I think we need to be united with our voices and stay in touch with our local restaurant associations and look for some of the relief, push for some of the things that that came about for the first shutdown. I think everybody's still in a daze. So I think that discussion needs to continue to happen. And I know that the Restaurant Association is working in that regard, but I think all of us need to band together and make our voices heard.
Thank you. Stacy, thank you for being with us. A final comment from you.
I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here. Dan, I totally agree with the masks. It feels, personal opinion aside, that feels like where we should have been all along. And perhaps we wouldn't have seen the increase in numbers that we have. But I do think that I think that we have to stop with the industry making the restaurant and bar industry the root of all things evil in COVID. I think that message has been conveyed, unfortunately, at a national level and a state level, that has paralyzed us. And I don't believe, and nor does research and the statistics from the National Restaurant Association, they say loud and clear that it is not the restaurant and bar industry alone where COVID is spreading. And in particular, in this latest wave, it's from personal individual gatherings, because people are getting together because they're tired. They want to be with their friends and family. And most of those gatherings, frankly, are not in bars and restaurants. It's not where we see it. And I think that most importantly, we need to have our messaging clear and accurate, and to support small business. Restaurants, bars, our locally owned businesses, support those people who have been there for you for a long time and will be there for that resurgence that these folks are talking about, because it's going to be there. And I'll pay that double for a concert ticket. And I will also pay lots of money to go out to eat and drink. I love my family, but I've cooked a lot. And so I am ready to go.
So
thank you.
So that is a great note to end on a high note of optimism, which we all share. So I want to thank you, Stacy, again. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tim. This has been a remarkable journey for all of us. Our hearts go out to all of the owner-operators of food and beverage operations in our area, in the state, in the country, in the world, because what we're talking about here is impacting this industry worldwide. So thank you for all that you do, and thank you to all of you on the phone that support owner and operators of the food and beverage industry. And thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Tom.
Again, this session is recorded and will be shared broadly across the region.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you.
Julie?
Thank you.
Bye.
Well
Julie,
said,
wanna
Tom.
make a comment?
Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you.